Hi, welcome back to the Colorvent Calendar 2025 and let's go for day number 10. And day number 10 is here. We still are far away from the end of this crazy adventure that is opening all these doors. And the color is called Flame Nebula. The Flame Nebula in Orion seems to ignite as nearby starlight sets orange hydrogen ablaze. For me it's very hard to read this somehow. I don't know if it's writing, how it is, the form, not sure. There's something about the letters here that the format which is strange for me. So it's Flame Nebula and maybe kind of an orange. We'll see, or a terracotta color. We'll see how it will look on paper. Now let's look at how the Flame Nebula will look like on paper. These caps are really tight. So let's use these pipettes to take 1, 2, 3 large drops of ink, put the pipette into a glass of water, then close our Flame Nebula and let's have our knife and let's see how this one will look like. So kind of burnt orange. Is that a color? But it's kind of a burnt orange, but it is quite bright, I would say. It's quite luminous. So I always look at the name to see if these are kind of names that I cannot really describe well because they are related to themes that I don't really know much about. So I don't know. This looks like an interesting ink. It's not red, it's not brown. I think it is a rich dark orange, and I just want to see how it dries because I think I'm liking it. So I'll be back right next after this is dry. This is how the dry swatch looks like. It is kind of not really a brick red, but terracotta. It's not very easy to describe. Let me show you some color comparisons, but I don't think I have any perfect match to it. So from inks that are not Inkvent calendars and so on, I have here the KWZ Monarch, which I think it's close enough, but with more color variation and a little bit deeper and warmer. I also have the Kaveco Sunrise Orange, but it is more vivid. And then I have here the Private Reserve Buttercup, which in the darker areas is more similar, but again, not the same color. This is more yellow and this is more... It's hard for me to say. Maybe orange with a hint of magenta. It's very hard to say. Then I have here 3 inks from the Diamine Inkvent calendar from 2021. The brand is Snap, which is more similar, but again you can see the color is not the same. We have the Vintage Copper. The base color is more similar to that one, but then you have this amazing shimmer, and we also have the Candlelight that is much more yellow. So I have no real match for this ink. Would I need this ink because I don't have a real match? I would say I would not, because it's not that unique and I usually prefer real oranges, much more intense, bright, and so on. It's nice, and it's mostly nice if you want to use it with pens that have kind of a terracotta color, and one of the pens that I chose has that color, so we can see that next to each other. Then we have here the chromatography. Sorry, I was missing the word. And here we can see it is made of yellow and then kind of a magenta, as I told you. The yellow is a little bit water resistant. There, not waterproof, but it's water resistant. Some smears out, and then the magenta goes away. So it is made of yellow and magenta, and the yellow part is a little bit water resistant. For this ink, I chose two pens, both with fine nibs, but the nibs are very different, although they are both fine. One is this is the Pilot Lucina. I have this pen for a very long time. It is kind of a smaller pen. The Pilot Lucina in red. It has a nice fine, I can't see the F there, but it should be there. Maybe you can see it. Okay, I see it now. So it has a fine steel nib. It is a cartridge converter pen. I enjoy it. It was one of the first pens that I ever bought, and I like it. And then we have the Parker Centennial Dual Fold Big Red, which is a newer version. I like this pen a lot. Today the Parker Dual Fold got a crazy price, so I think we can no longer buy them. At least I won't, unless I find it used at good prices. So it has a very nice nib, and this is also a fine nib. It should be written there on the feed. It's a fine nib and cartridge converter pen, but the color of the pen is more on that brick terracotta color, and I think, although it's not a perfect match, I think it goes very well with this kind of pens, mostly with the Parker Dual Fold, because this one is really red, the other one is not red. It's that kind of vintage red. Let's bring papers to the table, and we have the Moleskine paper, the Oxford, and the Navigator copy paper. Again, inks look much better on the yellowish Moleskine paper. First of all, you can see the real big difference between the two pens. Although they are both fine nibs, the line width is not the same. There is not much shading with the Pilot Lucina because it's very fine, but with the Parker Dual Fold, the shading is quite nice. Sometimes it's almost dramatic because there is some difference between lighter and darker parts. There is some ghosting, we can see through, not really a bleed through. On the Oxford Optic paper, both pens, the writing with both pens looks lighter and a little bit more reddish, and again you can see some shading, some tone variation, and it looks nice, I would say. Again, no problems. Usually with Oxford paper there is no problems on the other side. Usually the ink doesn't go anywhere, stays on top of the page, and this is it. I'm looking at both, and I really prefer how they look on the slightly off-white paper that Moleskine has. And finally, we have the Navigator copy paper, which is not usually fountain pen friendly, and again it isn't. There is some bleed through with the fine nib on the Pilot, lots of bleed through with the fine nib on the Parker, and no real feathering, but we can see that the line is not completely crisp, and there is no shading, no color variation. So This is not the best, again, as most of the times the best paper would be a paper like the Oxford Optic paper. However, I tend to like a slightly more yellowish paper. Inks tend to look better. Of course, it will, because inks are usually slightly transparent, these will influence the apparent color of the ink. And finally, I have here on the Rhodia dot pad the Colorverse Colorvent Calendar 2025, ink number 10, Flame Nebula. I wrote this with the Pilot Lucina Red, and you can see there is some shading even with the Lucina, so I think the Rhodia is quite nice for that shading. It takes around 25 seconds completely dry, and here you have the thing that I told you earlier about this water resistance. It is quite water resistant, let's say maybe 60%, because I say 60% because the original color is no longer there, but it's still very well readable in yellow, which is not the right color, but it's still there, the ink is there, so this yellow water resistant line is there, so these will survive some stuff. Let's just write the usual Fox phrase with these two pens. Let's start with the Pilot Lucina and the Quick Brown Fox. Jumps over the lazy dog. Very faint line. This pen is very thin. The nib is very thin. It is more of an extra fine than a fine. And now with this, with the Parker, there's more in the medium than in the fine. The Quick Brown Fox jumps over the lazy dog. I have to say that I like much more the way this ink looks in the wetter nib. It looks richer, it looks more dense, with a better covering of the paper, better coverage of the paper. So this really looks nice, looks strong, and I like the way it looks with this nib. So this was the review of the Flame Nebula. It is a nice ink. I can see how this can be used in many situations. It can be even used in some situations where you want to use kind of a red color, but red would be too red, or you could use orange, but you don't want to use a very bright color. This is a good compromise. You have these on paper, you can perfectly distinguish these lines from black, blue, or printed text, but it's not that very bright thing screaming at you. It's just a nice orangey color. So this is all for this video. I hope to be back tomorrow for another one. So see you next time. Bye.